For decades, archaeologists told us the same story. Bronze Age sailors hugged the coastline. The Pacific Islands were too small for cities. The Silk Road ran through the desert, never the mountains. And the Sahara was always empty. Then came LiDAR. Then came ancient DNA. Then came a camera at the bottom of the Mediterranean, 56 miles from shore. One by one, 7 discoveries shattered what we thought we knew. And the strangest part is not what they found. It is what the textbooks still refuse to change. We are going to walk through all 7 of these discoveries today, from a shipwreck sitting a mile below the ocean surface to the largest quarried stones in human history. Each one comes from a different part of the world. Each one was found using modern technology, and each one contradicts something we were told was settled science. This is number 1. Number 1, the ship that crossed an ocean it was never supposed to cross. In 2023, an energy company called Energean was running a routine underwater survey for a natural gas pipeline off the northern coast of Israel. Their remotely operated vehicle, a deep-sea robot equipped with cameras and sonar, was mapping the Mediterranean seafloor when the feed picked up something the operators had never seen before. Hundreds of ancient ceramic jars. They were sitting upright on the ocean floor, arranged in neat rows, as if someone had carefully placed them there yesterday. The sediment around them was undisturbed. There were no fishing nets, no anchor damage, no sign that any human being had been near this spot in thousands of years. And the jars were nearly a mile below the surface. Dr. Jacob Sharvit, the director of the Maritime Archaeology Unit at the Israel Antiquities Authority, was called in to examine the footage. What he was looking at was the cargo of a Canaanite merchant vessel, dated to roughly 1400 to 1200 BCE. That alone would have made headlines. The Canaanites were among the most prolific traders of the ancient Mediterranean, but finding an intact cargo from that era is extraordinarily rare. But the location is what made this discovery unlike anything before it. The ship was resting 1.8 kilometers deep and 90 kilometers from the nearest coastline. 90 kilometers. That is 56 miles of open ocean in every direction. There was no island, no shoal, no land visible from any angle. Before this wreck, only 2 other late Bronze Age shipwrecks had ever been found in the entire Mediterranean. The Uluburun wreck, discovered in 1982 off southwestern Turkey, and the Cape Gelidonia wreck, found in 1960, were just a few hundred meters from shore. Both were in shallow coastal waters, well within sight of land. Both reinforced the established consensus. Bronze Age sailors followed the coast. They island hopped. They never crossed open water. This ship destroyed that consensus. It was sitting in the middle of the sea, with hundreds of intact amphorae still in formation. The ship itself is estimated at 12 to 14 meters long. The cargo showed no signs of panic. No evidence that the crew tried to lighten the load before sinking. No jars tossed overboard in desperation. Whatever happened to this vessel, it happened suddenly. The conclusion was unavoidable. Whoever sailed this ship was not following a coastline. They were navigating by the stars, crossing open water on purpose 3,300 years ago. A capability that mainstream maritime archaeology had never attributed to Bronze Age Canaanite sailors. Dr. Eric Klein, one of the foremost scholars of the late Bronze Age, and Shelley Waxman from Texas A&M University, both weighed in. The ship's position demands celestial navigation. There is no other explanation for how it got there. On May 30th, 2024, a specialized team recovered 2 of the ancient jars from the seafloor and brought them to the surface for the first time in over 3 millennia. The ceramic emerged from the deep ocean into sunlight, still intact, still holding traces of whatever was stored inside. Petrographic analysis of the cargo is ongoing. But the ship itself has already rewritten one of the oldest assumptions in the field. And that was just the first discovery. The next one was not hidden underwater. It was hidden 2,000 meters above sea level. Number 2. The cities that should not exist on the Silk Road. Every map of the ancient Silk Road tells the same story. Trade caravans moved through lowland and oasis cities: Samarkand, Bukhara, Kashgar. The mountains between them were obstacles, dangerous passes to cross as quickly as possible. Nomadic herders lived up there, moving with their animals through the seasons. But nomads, according to the established view, do not build cities. That is what separates them from settled civilizations. In October 2024, a study published in the journal Nature proved that assumption completely wrong. Michael Fricchetti, an archaeologist at Washington University in St. Louis and a National Geographic explorer, had spent years working alongside Farhod Maksudov from the National Center of Archaeology in Uzbekistan. Together, they surveyed 2 sites in southeastern Uzbekistan in the mountains, at elevations between 2,000 and 2,200 meters above sea level. Their names are Tashbulak and Tugun Bulak. To map these sites properly, the team deployed something that had never been used in Central Asian archaeology before: drone-based LiDAR. Over the course of 3 weeks, they flew 17 separate drone missions over the mountain terrain. The resulting laser scans produced some of the highest resolution archaeological LiDAR images ever published. What the data revealed was not a camp, not a seasonal gathering place. It was a city. Tugun Bulak alone covered 120 hectares. To put that in perspective, medieval Samarkand, one of the most famous cities in Central Asian history, was roughly the same size. Tashbulak, the smaller of the 2 sites, featured a central fortress with rammed earth walls 3 meters thick. Watchtowers guarded the approaches. Public plazas connected clusters of residential buildings. And near the center, the team found what appears to have been an iron smelting factory, built on top of rich ore deposits in the surrounding mountains, with dense juniper forests providing charcoal fuel for the furnaces. Ground-penetrating radar at Tashbulak served as what the researchers called a Rosetta Stone for interpreting the surface LiDAR data. What they saw below ground matched and confirmed what the lasers showed above. These were not temporary camps. These were permanent, densely populated urban centers, built by pastoralist communities at elevations where less than 3% of the global population lives today. The population is estimated in the tens of thousands. But here is the part that no one can explain. Both cities were abandoned around the 11th century CE, and the archaeological evidence shows no signs of attack, no burning, no destruction layers, no invading army, and no evidence of disease or famine. The people who built these massive mountain settlements simply left, and nobody knows why. Zachary Sylvia from Brown University, who wrote expert commentary alongside the Nature publication, called the discovery a fundamental challenge to how we understand the entire history of Central Asia. That is 2 discoveries down, and we have already moved from the bottom of the Mediterranean to the peaks of Uzbekistan. Number 3 takes us somewhere more familiar: Egypt, but to a building that no Egyptologist expected to find. Number 3. The observatory that shattered expectations. When we think of ancient Egypt, we think of pyramids and tombs, pharaohs and mummies. What we do not think of is a purpose-built scientific research facility. And until August 2024, no one had ever found one. At Tel El Farain, a site in the western Nile Delta, better known by its ancient name, Buto, excavation director Hossam Ghonim and his team from the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities had been digging for years. Buto was the ancient ceremonial center of the goddess Wajet, protector of Lower Egypt. But what Ghanim's team uncovered in the summer of 2024 had nothing to do with ceremonial worship. They found an L-shaped mud brick building covering 850 square meters. Its east-facing entrance featured a traditional pylon gateway. Inside, the central hall contained a large stone platform inscribed with detailed astronomical observations, not decorative star patterns, not religious references to the heavens, actual recorded observations of sunrise and sunset positions across all 3 Egyptian seasons. Next to the platform sat a slanted stone sundial, and beside that, a merkhet, an ancient sighting instrument used to track the transit of specific stars across the night sky. A ceremonial boat depiction with 8 shrines was carved into one of the walls. This was not a temple with some astronomical decorations on the ceiling. This was a dedicated observatory, the first purpose-built astronomical facility ever identified in ancient Egyptian archaeology. For generations, Egyptologists had assumed that Egyptian astronomical knowledge was embedded in religious architecture. Stars appeared on tomb ceilings. Calendar calculations were inscribed in temple walls. But the assumption was always that astronomy served religion, not the other way around. No one expected to find a building where the primary function was systematic, scientific observation. Ghanim's team also recovered a gray granite statue of King Psamtik I, a bronze figure of Osiris wrapped in a serpent, and the first inscribed sky mat, known in Egyptian as Themet art, ever found at any archaeological site. This ceremonial textile was associated with the astronomical priesthood. The building dates to the 6th century BCE, during Egypt's 26th dynasty, the Sate period. This was a time when Egypt was recovering from Assyrian domination and facing Persian pressure from the east. Political chaos. Yet in the middle of that upheaval, a specialized priestly order called the Sman-Pi was systematically observing the heavens through dedicated eastern and western gates, recording what they saw, and maintaining instruments of considerable precision. Excavation at Buto is ongoing, and more artifacts are expected. But the bigger question is already on the table. If this observatory existed at Buto, how many others might be buried across the delta, at sites that have been excavated for decades without anyone knowing what to look for? We are at the halfway point now. 3 discoveries from 3 different parts of the world. The next one does not come from underwater, from mountains, or from the Egyptian desert. It comes from a computer screen. Number 4. 100 fortresses hiding in plain sight. In 2015, archaeologist Barry Malloy from University College Dublin was browsing satellite images of the Serbian countryside on Google Earth. The Pannonian Plain along the Tisa River had always been described as a Bronze Age backwater, a flat, featureless agricultural zone with no significant prehistoric settlements. Then Malloy noticed something. Faint circular marks in the soil, repeating patterns, barely visible, spread across kilometer after kilometer of farmland. He started counting. By the time his team published their findings in Pilo S1 in November 2023, they had identified over 100 previously unknown fortified settlements from the late Bronze Age. 100. In a region that textbooks said was empty. These were not small camps. The mega fort at Kornesti Yarkuri was enclosed by 33 kilometers of concentric ditches. That single site dwarfed the defensive works of the Hittites, the Mycenaeans, and the Egyptians from the same period. Each settlement showed clusters of 10 to 30 sub-circular features, evenly spaced, enclosed by earthworks. All of them were established between 1600 and 1450 BCE. Malloy used Sentinel-2 multispectral satellite analysis to identify 102 additional possible sites using vegetation indices. The best detection window was February through May, when crop marks revealed ancient earthworks invisible at other times of year. But here is where the mystery deepens. Nearly all of these settlements were abandoned simultaneously around 1200 BCE. the same moment known as the Bronze Age collapse, when civilizations across the eastern Mediterranean fell like dominoes. Malloy argued that it would be extremely unlikely for each of these more than 100 sites to have been independent chiefdoms competing with each other. Something connected them. Some organizing structure coordinated their construction and, perhaps, their abandonment. What that structure was, nobody knows. And the military technologies that emerged across Europe after this network collapsed suggest that whatever happened here sent ripples across the continent. Like and subscribe. We are past the halfway mark. 4 discoveries, 4 continents. The last 3 shift from stone and satellites to something unseen by any camera. Number 5. The ghost population in the Green Sahara. The Sahara Desert is the largest hot desert on Earth, 9 million square kilometers of sand and rock, stretching from the Atlantic coast to the Red Sea. Nothing lives there. Nothing grows. And the assumption, for a very long time, was that nothing ever did. But between 14,500 and 5,000 years ago, the Sahara was green. Rivers flowed through it. Lakes covered the landscape. Crocodiles and hippos lived in waterways that are now buried under dunes. And people lived there too, herding cattle across grasslands that stretched from modern-day Mauritania to the banks of the Nile. Then the climate shifted. The monsoon rains migrated south. The vegetation died. The lakes dried up. And the Sahara became the wasteland we know today. The people who had lived there for millennia vanished from history. Or so we assumed. In April 2025, a team led by Nada Salem and Johannes Kraus at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig published a study in Nature that fundamentally changed our understanding of who those people were. They extracted ancient DNA from 2 women buried roughly 7,000 years ago at Takarkori rock shelter, a site nestled in Libya's Tadrart Akakus Mountains. Savino di Lernia from Sapienza University in Rome had led the original excavations at this site starting in 2003, working for over 2 decades before the technology existed to analyze what he had found. Takarkori is a UNESCO World Heritage location, its walls covered with thousands of prehistoric rock paintings showing hunting scenes, green landscapes, and herds of cattle moving across open savanna. The DNA from these 2 women was the oldest ancient genetic material ever recovered from the Central Sahara. When the team at the Max Planck Institute sequenced it, they found something that matched nothing in the existing global genetic database. These women belonged to a previously unknown human lineage, not closely related to sub-Saharan African populations, not closely related to Levantine or Southwest Asian populations either. A deeply diverged ancestral North African group that had been genetically isolated for thousands of years. A ghost population. The standard explanation for how cattle herding reached North Africa was diffusion. Migrants from the Near East, where cattle were first domesticated, brought the practice with them as they expanded westward. The DNA demolished that model entirely. These green Saharan cattle herders were genetically unrelated to the people who originally domesticated cattle in Southwest Asia. They adopted pastoralism through cultural exchange. They saw what their eastern neighbors were doing and learned it themselves. No migration required. The question that remains is where the descendants of this ghost population went when the rain stopped and the desert took over. Their genetic signature has not been identified in any modern population tested so far. 7,000 years ago, they were thriving. Today, they are invisible. 2 more discoveries to go, and the next one takes us to the most unlikely place on this entire list. Number 6. The city hiding under 10,000 mounds. The Kingdom of Tonga sits in the South Pacific, roughly 2,000 kilometers north of New Zealand. The main island, Tonga Tapu, covers about 260 square kilometers. For most of recorded history, Western scholars dismissed Pacific islands like this one as too small and too isolated to support anything resembling an urban civilization before European contact. The Pacific, according to the textbooks, was a region of scattered villages and small chiefdoms, not cities. In April 2024, Philip Parton and Geoffrey Clark from the Australian National University published a study in the Journal of Archaeological Method and Theory that proved that narrative completely wrong. Using aerial LiDAR data originally acquired in 2011, Parton spent years mapping the surface of Tongatapu. What he found, hidden beneath the tropical vegetation and modern farmland, was a landscape shaped entirely by human engineering. Nearly 10,000 earth mounds spread across the island in organized patterns, connected by roads and surrounded by fortifications. Different neighborhoods were separated by social class, with gates controlling access between residential zones. Specialized burial mounds sat alongside unique pigeon snaring structures called Sia Heu Lupe, each one featuring a central pit 5 to 7 meters across. These were not random features. This was an urban layout. The site covered 1,170 hectares. Population estimates at its peak range from 50,000 to 60,000 people, with a settlement density of 6.16 people per hectare. The largest single mound, Mala e Vakapuna, had a base area of 1,290 square meters and a volume of approximately 1,700 cubic meters of moved earth. But the date is what makes this discovery a landmark. Radiocarbon analysis placed the origins of this settlement between 250 AD and 360 AD. The previous scholarly estimate for the emergence of urbanism in the Pacific was around 1000 AD. Tongatapu pushed that date back by 700 years. To put that in context, when this city was being founded, Rome was still an empire. The Maya were building their classical cities. And here, on a small island in the South Pacific that most Western scholars ignored, a Polynesian civilization was constructing a planned urban center with roads, fortifications, and class-separated neighborhoods. Parton described it as a completely different model of urbanism than anything found in Europe or Asia. Low-density living with open-sided houses on elevated mounds, park-like green spaces, and ocean views from every neighborhood. It did not look like a European city, which is exactly why it took this long for anyone to recognize it for what it was. Western archaeology was looking for stone walls and grid streets. Tonga built a city out of earth, vegetation, and spatial planning. The settlement was connected to the Tiu'i Tonga dynasty, whose political and cultural influence eventually spread across the entire Southwest Pacific from the 13th to the 19th century. The roots of that influence, we now know, go back far earlier than anyone imagined. This is our final discovery, and it is the one that puts everything else in perspective. Number 7. The stones too heavy for history. Everything we have covered so far involves ancient peoples accomplishing things we did not think they could. Crossing open oceans, building cities in mountains, tracking stars with precision instruments. But this final discovery is different. This is a story about what happens when an empire reaches the absolute limit of what is physically possible. In 1405, the Yongle Emperor of China's Ming Dynasty ordered the construction of the largest stone monument ever conceived, a memorial stele to honor his father, Zhu Yuanzhang, the dynasty's founder. The site chosen was Yangshan Quarry, a mountainous region east of Nanjing, where the bedrock was solid limestone. The quarrying began. Thousands of laborers carved 3 massive blocks directly out of living rock using hand tools, hammers, chisels, wedges, and controlled fire. The cuts are still visible today, clean and precise, with tool marks preserved across flat surfaces the size of tennis courts. The stele base measures 30.35 meters long, 13 meters wide, and 16 meters tall. Its estimated weight is 16,250 metric tons. The stele body is 49.4 meters long. The stele head is 20.3 meters wide. Combined, all three blocks weigh 31,167 metric tons. To put that number in context, the famous trilithon blocks at Baalbek in Lebanon, which are themselves considered one of the great unsolved mysteries of ancient engineering, weigh roughly 800 tons each. The Yangshan base alone is more than 20 times heavier, and there are 3 blocks. If assembled and erected, the completed stele would have stood 73 meters tall. That is 24 stories. Taller than the Statue of Liberty without its pedestal. It would have been visible from every corner of the ancient capital. But the stele was never assembled. After the quarrying was finished, after thousands of workers spent years cutting these blocks free from the mountain, the engineers faced a problem that, according to every surviving record, they had no solution for. They could not move it. Historical Chinese documents note that transporting a much smaller stele, weighing 929 tons, from a quarry in Shandong province once required 15 years and tens of thousands of workers pulling it on wooden rollers. The Yangshan base was more than 17 times heavier than that. The mathematics simply did not work. No combination of levers, rollers, sledges, or ramps could generate enough force to shift 16,000 tons of limestone across mountainous terrain. Folk songs emerged in the surrounding villages. They spoke of divine intervention as the only force capable of moving the stones of Yangshan. A nearby village is still called Fentu, which means grave mound, named in memory of the laborers who died during the quarrying. And this is where the mystery gets uncomfortable. The engineers who planned this project were not incompetent. These were the same minds behind the Grand Canal, the Forbidden City, and the treasure fleets of Admiral Zheng He. They represented arguably the most advanced engineering capability on Earth in the early 15th century. Did they genuinely miscalculate the transport requirements? Did they have a plan that was abandoned for political reasons when the Yongle Emperor shifted his capital from Nanjing to Beijing? Or did a transport method exist in concept that was simply never tested? The answer may be buried in imperial records that did not survive the centuries. The 3 megaliths remain at Yangshan Quarry to this day, still partially attached to the bedrock, still waiting. 7 discoveries: the Mediterranean, Central Asia, Egypt, Serbia, the Sahara, the Pacific, and China. A shipwreck that rewrites maritime history, cities that rewrite the Silk Road, an observatory that rewrites Egyptian science, fortresses that rewrite European prehistory, DNA that rewrites African migration, a city that rewrites Pacific civilization, and stones that remind us that even the most advanced builders in history could reach limits they did not expect. Every single one of these discoveries was made with technology that did not exist a generation ago. LiDAR, satellite multispectral imaging, deep-sea robotics, and ancient DNA sequencing. The question is not whether there are more discoveries like these waiting to be found. The question is how many of them are already sitting in the data, in the archives, in the soil, waiting for someone to finally look. If you want to see a full deep dive into any of these 7 discoveries, tell us in the comments which one deserves its own video.